everyone, I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Brandon.
And today you made me watch Minority Report, the Tom Cruise sci-fi movie from 2002. Everybody remembers this movie, right? This is one of those movies that I remember being like really popular and kind of critically acclaimed at the time, that I guess doesn't come up as often now as you might think it would, but whenever somebody does mention, oh yeah, that's right, Minority Report.
I remember that movie. That's
that movie about cops arresting people before they've done anything wrong. And I guess whenever there's that kind of ethical question about things, this is like the predestination versus free will movie. Like this is the example people like to go to when we're talking about
it's
this
definitely
topic.
the one that I go to.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my theater experience on this movie. We had a problem in the theater, and they had to completely stop the movie and switch us all to another theater that already had the movie in progress.
Yeah.
And it was right before a jump scare in the movie. That had just happened in our theater when it went down, and we got to the next theater, and it hadn't happened yet, and it got me a second time.
Actually, I think you're not giving that scene enough credit by calling it a jump scare, because I think it's kind of better than that. Like,
well, it is good.
Like it does startle you in your seat, but it isn't like, oh, there's something on the screen. Oh no, it's somebody like
right.
freaks out. You don't expect
somebody
that.
grabs somebody else.
No, I guess it actually is, but it's a really good jump.
Good one,
now that you say that, no, it is, but it's a really good one. It's when we're gonna, by the way, spoil the crap out of this. This is an almost 20-year-old movie. This is like an 18-year-old movie. So if you don't care
How is it 18 years old?
If you care about spoilers for this, if you've never seen Minority Report, you might want to watch that before I'll do the superhero rewind thing. You might want to watch the movie before you watch this review.
Certainly.
And we won't make this like a really nitty-gritty in and out spoiler cast. We won't get to everything, of course, but feel free to bring up spoilers on this. I think this movie's kind of hard to talk about without discussing the ending and without talking about what the film starts out as versus what it kind of, in my mind, to a degree, degenerates into. I still like this movie, don't get me wrong.
Same.
But I didn't enjoy it as much as I expected to, having not seen it in so many years. By the way, this movie was requested by Azim, who put in a request a long time ago for this, finally getting to it, so thanks a bunch to you, Azim. And this is, I guess, the third now in an accidental series of You Made Me Watch on movies that I saw one time and I'm being forced to revisit now. And I've had different experiences with these. So Signs, I remembered not liking, and I still had, a lot of issues with, but I flipped my sign green this time, which I was surprised by. And then I did iRobot, and still didn't care for that by the end. Certain things I appreciated about that movie, and then once I got the third act and realized where it was all going and how anti-Asimov that movie really is, I was like, oh wait, no, I feel the same way I did about it the first time. Minority Report, I'm somewhere in the middle. Like, I remember enjoying this movie, but not being as enamored with it as some other people did, and I guess I have that now, but I don't think I even liked it this time as much as I did the first time around, so we'll discuss that. This movie is very much a product of its time, and I don't think it holds up as well as I was hoping that it would.
I don't think it held up as well either, but I still liked it almost as much as I did. This is probably either the third or the fourth time that I'm seeing it. But I never saw Signs. It's one I've always wanted to see.
Sure.
And I remember liking iRobot, but I've only seen that like twice.
Well, of course, this and iRobot are in more of a similar category, obviously, in sci-fi, in that they're both futuristic things, and they're both about not dystopias, but futures with a lot of social commentary about freedom and stuff. I mentioned earlier the free will versus predestination thing. Of course, that's the crux of this. Mm-hmm. I ultimately, by the end, wish that was further explored and it was even more of the crux of this. When I say that it degenerates into something else, I guess what I mean is it turns into a whodunit movie. And that's not what I was really there for, and so once it turns into that, it feels like, I'm getting ahead of myself, but it feels like kind of an easy way to do a tear down the system movie, and I often complain about those in sci-fi, where it's like, by the third act, we have to like completely change the society, isn't as bad about that, but that's partly just because the whole precog thing, the whole pre-crime idea is new and not completely prevalent in society yet. So when we do the big we shouldn't have gone to the tear down the system place movie that I always like to complain about is Daybreakers, that vampire movie, also from the early 2000s. But that's like the damage is already done and the society is already being run by vampires. With this, it's not. The pre-crime thing is prevalent throughout all 50 states yet.
Right.
It's an experiment. We started it.
But it's about to go out there.
It's just like RoboCop. And in fact, there's a lot of stuff in this that's comparable to RoboCop, including I'm pretty sure, I meant to look this up and I forgot, but the actor who plays the old guy in this who is... heading up the pre-crime thing, I think is the old man from RoboCop, in a somewhat similar role. And if you've seen RoboCop 2, the fact that he was, again, we're going to spoil this movie, the fact that he is the old man in this, because they could have just called him that again. He's the old man. He's just an even older man now because it's 2002 versus the late 80s. If you've seen RoboCop 2, that should immediately make you go, oh no, I know who the villain of this piece is. I know who it's going to turn out to be. But while you have the free will versus predestination thing, you also at the same time have a theme that we're constantly making a lot of sci-fi movies and action movies about right now, which is freedom versus security. And so both of those things are like fully wrapped up and integrated in this. So like some really important stuff and still very much topical today things that this movie deals with, and to some degrees in really interesting and intelligent ways, and then in some ways it gets a little hackneyed. And honestly, Brandon, I think my biggest issue with this movie is that it ends up kind of like iRobot, but this is a much better movie than iRobot. It's too much of an action movie.
It does have a fair bit of action, and
well, I'm not saying it's bad that it has action. I'm saying that it feels like a movie that doesn't want to be an action movie, that is forced into the trappings of that in order to sell it as a blockbuster. It doesn't scream blockbuster material to me, and that continues to kind of take me out.
I think it would have more of a niche audience, honestly, but I don't remember the kind of crowd that I saw it with.
But it didn't. It did big guns. It was like it did like $400 million against like $100 and something million budget. Yeah, I mean the advertising campaign for this was real. I mean, I don't know if you remember that, but this was kind of a big blockbuster that year.
I remember that I really wanted to see this movie. Yeah. So it must have been big.
So it did that thing where it was trying to be really accessible to everybody,
and it was Tom Cruise, and I mean. I wanted to see the next Tom Cruise movie, so...
And I'm not saying that the whole thing is completely dumbed down because of that. I'm saying that scene to scene, I kind of feel like I'm watching different movies sometimes. Like, some of the writing is really good. But when you get into, and I mean, you and I were both laughing at this, when you get into right after Tom Cruise's name comes up, John
Anderton.
Mr. Anderton.
I kept thinking that too.
As soon as, well, and also this is very much a product of that same Matrix era. So and there are some things in this movie where you're like, yep, the Matrix happened. And particularly in the scene that we're talking about, when he starts running, like you might as well have just had the Matrix soundtrack running through that scene. Except it gets goofier than that, right? Like once his name comes up and he's a fugitive now, and they start and the rest of the pre-crime cops start chasing after him. It turns into a kind of 90s action movie, and like this is of course right after the 90s, but I just mean like a very, very commercial one. You know what I mean? Like overly commercial. And I was like really taken aback by that because that was not the movie I'd been watching for like the 40 minutes leading up to that.
And one of the things that took me out of the movie was that when it did start to turn action, and especially like when they finally like surrounded him and he starts grabbing onto the people with the jetpacks on him, like some of the effects didn't hold up the way I remembered them in the theater. Yep. And you could clearly see that most of these guys, are hanging by wires and moving by like wires and things, and like just didn't. That was a little disappointing, but overall, it it took me out a little bit, but I still appreciated the overall aspect of everything. But also, I'm going to argue that there's even a kind of a third thing going on here, and that's there was more comedy in this movie than
Yeah.
I remember.
But that's part of that 90s action movie thing.
Yeah, I
You
get.
know?
Yeah, that's definitely
and,
true.
And the soundtrack gets way too flamboyant during some of those places. Like when I say it's not integrated as well, you have comedy scenes in this movie.
Yes.
This movie's too good and too smart for comedy scenes. You
Agreed.
need integrated levity. And when he's like running after his own eyeballs, bouncing down
Yeah.
the corridor, I'm just like, no. I remembered that from the theater. That was like.
I
That was
remember
very
that
silly.
very specifically too, but also like I'd like to point out that real eyeballs aren't perfectly round and they wouldn't be rolling like marbles.
Yeah, no, of course, sure.
You made a really good point though that I really wish that they'd done this. Is I wish that they'd done the opening credits with the balls rolling down the overly sophisticated machine.
I think yeah, more sophisticated than it needed to be.
Yeah.
But I like the explanation for why there wouldn't. Like no two of those would be exactly
Yes,
the same.
the wood grain
That's fine.
That's cool, but it didn't need to roll down marble madness.
Yeah.
Like chutes and ladders or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Did it need to be almost a Rube Goldberg machine?
But it would have been cool if they'd done the credits that way, like you said.
Yeah.
It would have been.
Well,
a
at
nice
first I
touch.
thought they were because it like flips around and shows a name, and I've seen a lot of movies that do that kind of thing, and I'm like, is that a character name or an actor name? And then it went to another one that I knew was a character in the movie, and I was like, oh, these are the character names. They should have done an opening sequence for this,
Right.
Especially because I don't want to sound hypocritical when I say that. If this is going to be kind of a blockbuster, that would have set the tone for the blockbuster bit of it, because that kind of screams, bigger, more commercial summer movie. If you do that kind of an opening, you should have had the 3-minute kind of more bombastic opening.
Yeah, with a main title sequence, just a really nice overture to the whole movie.
Yeah,
at large.
I think I didn't appreciate the action stuff as much because it opened trying to look like a more understated movie. You know what I mean? I found myself comparing this to Constantine a lot throughout, for a number of reasons. And it has that same okay, we're a rated R movie. That's gonna be about some, obviously difficult adult subject matter, and there's gonna be some violence and some sex and some rough and tumble stuff. Some of which I think was handled in a sophisticated enough way or a thoughtful enough way, and some of which I thought was kind of reveling a little bit in not raunchiness, but I guess violence and stuff a little bit here and there. But it's sort of, but like Constantine, it's also a really commercial movie. I mean, and Constantine doesn't have this, but one thing we should mention is that this movie's got product placement up the wazoo.
Oh, out
it's ridiculous
the wazoo! Yes,
how much of that there is, and that doesn't always bother me like it bothers a lot of other people. But I mean, I'll get to this in a minute too. But I think part of the reason for that was it's 50 years in the future from when this was made. It's 2054, and it's I didn't. Again, I'll talk more about this later, but I didn't fully buy that the world looked as much like the world we were in 02 as it does. I didn't feel like they extrapolated enough and were smart enough about what the future would look like. So some of those companies I just wasn't even totally buying would still be at the forefront like they were then.
Really?
So that was kind of a question for me. But but getting back to the Constantine comparison, that's just an example of how it, like Constantine, was trying to kind of have its cake and eat it too, where it's a dark, smart movie, but it's also kind of bigger and more accessible. Now, Constantine wasn't rated R, and that was somewhat. Or I always do this, or was it that it was and it didn't feel like that's what it was? It was, but it didn't feel like it needed to be.
Okay.
This absolutely did, and yet a lot of it feels like it was almost wishing it had a PG-13 rating. Do you know what I'm saying? Part of the other reason that I compare it to Constantine, or that I was thinking about Constantine a lot through this, is because it's got the guy, the surgeon who takes out the eyeballs.
Peter Stormare
is the guy who played the devil at the end of Constantine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and he's doing a really similar performance.
I love Peter Stormare.
He's just always super
he's in
creepy.
Fargo as well.
Or at least the roles I've seen. I haven't seen Fargo, but the roles that I've seen him in, he's always super creepy, and he makes really odd acting choices that tend to. I don't know what the quack quack thing is, but I like it.
He was also in a bunch of VW commercials.
He takes risks, that guy.
Yeah, he really does. He played a German.
Was he really?
He was in these VW commercials where he'd be like, V-dub in the house. He'd like, time to unpimp the ride.
That's hilarious.
And then they'd smash some stupid guy's ride, and then they'd give him a VW.
I gotta look that up.
He's a great actor. I love him.
That's really funny. But yeah, I'm immediately wanting to go to negatives because the positives... This is one of those movies where the positives seem kind of obvious, and this is a thing that I was expecting not to have quite as many problems with as I did. But, Brandon, why do you still like it as much as you did? Like, let's get into some positives, because it is a good movie overall. It's just, I'm finding the negative stuff more interesting to talk about right now.
So I think that a lot of it has to do with my positive experience of seeing it in the theater, as well as...
Sure, but just what still holds up about it now? Let's talk about the movie.
Right, no, the things that still hold up about it would be the kind of the themes that it made me think about then, it still makes me think about now. The predestination versus, free will. And also, if you didn't actually commit the crime, are you still liable for said crime?
But do we explore that that much?
I don't know that we explored enough, but it gets me thinking, and maybe the movie doesn't want to try to tell us the answer. Maybe it doesn't go that far.
No. But there's a big difference between exploring a thing in a film and giving you the ins and outs and making it interesting and telling you what you're supposed to think about it.
True enough.
And this starts... That's my big issue with it. And I know I said let's throw out positives, but I don't fully agree with you on this. You can't say the movie's still great because of the premise of the thing. Like, yeah, we all know what the premise is. You see what I'm saying? Like, what's the... But what do you think of the execution of all of that?
Well, as you said, this movie kind of turns into something different, but I still feel like we follow the journey... Okay, we definitely follow the journey of John Anderton, and I'm drawing a blank on Colin Farrell's character, but it's kind of a fight for survival of what John Anderton knows and what he feels is like the future of crime prevention, and what he's all in on this project, and he learns a valuable lesson as through interacting with these other characters, and the who he thought was his mentor on all of this is his old former sergeant, the guy he knew from Baltimore, and he learns differently, and he's able to reclaim his own humanity by the end of this movie, and I feel like that was kind of a nice character arc.
I just don't know about that. Like, I feel like, again, the problem is the whole tear down the system thing. By the end of the day, it seems like what he learns is that it started from the wrong place, so we have to dismantle it. Like the actual principles in play, I don't know if that is a character arc about his deciding that, no, we really shouldn't actually be doing this. It's a lot more about where it starts from. It's a lot more, well, this guy murdered this precog's mother, and that's what allows him to set this whole thing up in the first place. And so he's put these three precogs in an inhuman position and just used them as as basically a machine to make the precognition thing happen. By the way, Enterprise Season 4 rips this off with the Aenar arc,
really?
where the Aenar are these telepathic, like an underground version of Andorians, and the Romulans kidnap one and make them fly a drone for them, which for some reason this space drone has to be flown by a telepath. But anyway, I didn't realize that until I watched this. I think they're ripping this off a little bit for that, and this movie came out only 3 years before that.
Okay.
So it's stealing that a little bit. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is, it's wrapped up in a little bit of a bow at the end. It was...
There were certainly some convenience factors that we noticed going through.
Well, yeah, but and we'll talk about that, because that's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I'm just saying that at the end of the day, it's like everything gets a little bit too hunky-dory for this guy. It's like he gets to get back together with his wife again, and now they have another kid on the way, and we've gotten rid of the pre-crime thing entirely. I didn't fully even buy that that's what would happen. I would think that there would be research into how to do it some other way.
Certainly.
Like by the end, I didn't feel like this was an arc for the character or for anybody else or this larger society about really the ethical conundrum of whether or not it's okay to arrest people before they've done a crime, so much as it's just, well, we started that from the wrong place, and it would, like, the ethical issue turns out to be a little bit more just about like, ends justifies the means. Is it okay, in order for the sake of the, like, preventing crime and the safety of people, to have a string of murders that got us there in the first place, and to and to basically use slave labor? Like, it ends up being a lot more about that. And so the question I would ask you is, at the end of the day, and I don't think, I can't answer this question, so you tell me, at the end of the day, does John, because he was chased because he was believed to have committed a murder in the future that he sort of didn't, that by the end he's decided that his ethics are different about that?
I don't think...
When you say he's found his humanity more, I don't see it. I'm not with you on that.
I say that in a slight side note to the... I don't think he was trying to take down the system that he believed in. I think that...
No, but he has to by the end when he finds out where it started from.
But I don't think he was trying to take down the system. He was just trying to take down the man at the top.
Yeah, which takes down the system. It's a conspiracy that makes it happen in the first place, and it turns out that the whole thing started from this completely unethical place. The ethical question of whether you should arrest people before they do a crime because they're supposed to do it in the future, and the whole Minority Report idea where there might be some alternate futures, but we've kind of swept that under the rug, that is completely buried in that third act.
Of course. But also...
it stops being about that at all.
Keep in mind that...
and he was set up, like...
Yeah, he was set up. So, you know, he realizes that if you know your future, if you know your future, you can change it. Most of the people that they put away, they didn't know their future, but they got caught, you know, right before. I think he still believed in the system.
That's what I'm saying. I do too.
I think he was still believing in the system, but I think
he does by the end also. I don't think this is a character arc about that.
No,
but you said he found his humanity. I don't want.
That's separate from what I'm talking. What I'm talking about there is that he was able to move past his heartbreak from the beginning of the movie, the fact that he'd lost his son. He's able to regain his own life back, and I'm with you.
It didn't sound like that's what you were talking about.
Oh, well, that is what I'm referring to in that arc. He didn't want to take the system down. It just happened to get taken down because he's taken down at the guy at the top because of the information that he found out. So I don't think he wanted to dismantle this system. And while I think the voiceover at the end's a little
obviously
hokey,
because he believed in
right, and I
think
he still did.
But what I'm saying is, wouldn't it have been? I don't want to rewrite the thing, but wouldn't it have been a lot more interesting if there was like an ambiguity about, you know, more of an ambiguity about whether or not, like, he could have stopped his own crime, right? Like, it's pretty clear that it's not, well, okay, I guess I do appreciate the consistency of this, because a lot of, like, time travel things are not consistent about this, where, like, yes, there is a choice, and you'll have a lot of things like this that will say that, but, you know, like Terminator, but there's always a question about it, and I don't totally know even if the people making the thing
understand their own mechanics.
Yeah, understand their own mechanics, exactly. Yeah. But so I guess I wouldn't necessarily want it to be ambiguous about whether or not he could change his future, because it's clear from the very beginning that everybody can. Like, we have an example right at the beginning with the guy who, in the moment, decides to murder his wife because she's sleeping around on him. And that situation is hilarious, by the way. It's really hard to take that seriously. I thought,
you know, I can't see anything without my glasses.
You know, I'm blind without my glasses.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm trying to get at is, I'm struggling to articulate this. I guess the deal is, it would have been more interesting if it was actually really a murder that, in in whatever alternate future where he committed that murder, he really actually did commit it. And maybe it is a little bit ambiguous about because he almost does, like he almost kills that guy, and
right.
and they make me buy in the moment that he does. But the thing is, the precog, of course, she's in the room and she's telling him not to, and then it turns out the guy actually is using this as an elaborate way to commit suicide, and so that he can get insurance money for his family or something, or not insurance, but I guess the guy that actually did kill the kid was going to take care of his family or something. I don't know why he was, or I don't know how he was going to get money, but...
Well, the guy, so John Anderson found out about the woman who was found out later to be the mother of the precogs.
Yeah.
So the head of pre-crime decided that he now needed to be taken out of the equation. So they brought somebody out of stasis. And they said, "We'll take care of your family."
That's what it was,
for you if you kill.
I had
John
not fully
Anderson.
put all that together. So at the end of the day, we actually never even know who killed his son.
We never find out because Colin Farrell's character comes in and he's like, "This." He understands the situation. Like, this is an orgy of evidence that he says.
Yeah, I like that line.
Yeah, it was good. He's like, you just don't have that.
And I'll
it's
say,
too convenient.
With some of the contrivances that you and I noticed, and we should point a few of them out, and with how it turns into a grand conspiracy at the end. I'm really glad that the death of his son was not part of that conspiracy. I kind of thought maybe it would go there, and that would have been way too much. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so I guess it's possible that the precog in the first place saw him accidentally kill that guy. Like, we don't actually really know.
We don't know which
really
side
did,
of everything that was.
or didn't. We do, well, and actually, no.
Actually,
we do know.
She did see the accidental kill.
It had to have been the accidental kill because she says there is no minority report.
Right.
And if there had been a minority report, that would be an alternate timeline that she saw.
So,
right?
They're just assuming he murdered him.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening.
Oh,
yeah.
it was an assumption of murder.
Which is
that's another layer I hadn't considered.
It's another layer of the whole murder mystery plot, and as a murder mystery thing, that's interesting. But as a contemplative, character-driven science fiction piece, I just think it would have been a lot more interesting if it was about him trying to prevent himself from actually murdering someone when he was going to really murder someone, and not knowing why he would then. And then that would make him maybe look at all the things that he's been doing for the pre-crime program differently, because it's like, well, now I can appreciate what the guy was going through at the beginning when I could have never imagined that I would kill a person. But suddenly in the moment, I'm like a different person.
Well, he gets that, but he never explores it of himself. He just all of a sudden the switch flips when he sees the picture of his kid on the bed.
Yeah, and I think the movie has kind of a light switch where it turns into this much more plotty, kind of plot driven thing, for the most part.
I remembered when we got to the part where he finds out that, and the climactic thing that we've been leading to is not the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my goodness, there's actually so much more movie after this that we haven't seen. And it's long.
It's like an hour. It's like 2.5 hours.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it's the plot twists are kind of fun and engaging, and I buy a lot of it. Although a lot of the details end up being really really kind of convenient and contrived, and we should throw a few of those out.
There was a couple of them. John Anderson's trying to get away from all of his buddies, coming in their jetpacks trying to get him. And it looks like he's got a plan on how... He's like, everybody always runs.
This is silly.
Everybody always runs. And then he backs up into a window and a dog jumps up in like a kennel from behind the window and starts barking, like a Rottweiler or something, starts barking. And it spooks everybody, and then John's able to get away. Like, he was not going to get away. That movie was going to end right there. He was going to be... put in the halo and set to...
Yeah, and there are one or two other places where just kind of conveniently he's able to get out of a thing. There was a thing with a car. I'm trying to remember what exactly it was, where where there's this machine that's about to crush him, and then we cut to something else, and then he's later on just in a car.
So he's
and I don't know how he managed to get away from the machine that was going to crush him and get in that, but I'm not supposed to ask questions because he's like a generic action hero guy. He can get out of any situation. And
so Lexus paid heavily for a big Lexus sign in this movie, and if I don't know if it was a Lexus manufacturer or an Audi. I seem to have remembered it being an Audi manufacturer. But whatever car gets manufactured, he's in that car. He's on the assembly line of that car, and it's putting things down. And the last thing we see is the seat's coming down for his head. At him. The seat's coming down, and they're about to screw the seat in.
And then later he's just in it.
And then when they're walking out to where the car is going to be presented at the end of the assembly line, which is all automated, all of a sudden he pops up from where the seat is, and is just in the car now, and he can drive it. Why is he being able to drive it? I also didn't buy that they couldn't track that vehicle because in this future everything's trackable. One of the things,
and also when he goes back to the temple,
the temple,
and he uses his own eyeball in order to get in.
He should have been flagged.
How are there not alarms blaring everywhere?
Yeah, exactly. But one of the things that this movie kind of gets right is the attention to ad tracking, which I have pointed to over the last decade, because I noticed early on how ads were starting really, really tracking you. Granted, there was some of that, this was in an era where you had 50 million pop-ups on your screen every time you clicked on an ad.
But that's
on
a personal computer that's just stationary and at your house.
No, but so now ads travel with you everywhere, and this is, it scans your eyes, it knows where you are, your phone knows where you are, your phone can link to any number of things, ads will pop up in places.
But the bigger thing is targeted advertising, where it's specifically talking to you.
Exactly.
That's a thing that gets right.
Yes.
Surrounding that are a number of things that I feel like in 2002 are not that difficult to call. And I'm trying to have a historical perspective, and obviously 2002 doesn't feel that long ago to me, but the big area where this doesn't hold up so well is and I think this is part of the commercial action movie side, where it's got to make things look familiar so they don't lose the general audience. I think there's a lot of stuff where they're not, like the Harry Potter newspapers, I don't think this movie actually is trying to be predictive, in a lot of visual areas. I think a lot of it is just really easy visual storytelling, and that goes even into some of the standard symbolic stuff that's not even necessarily about the science fiction stuff. You complained that there is this is related, I promise. You complained, and I agree with you, that in the third act there's a bit where John goes back to his ex-wife, and in their yard is a knocked over tricycle that looks really rusty, and it's why would you have that there? Your kid died years ago.
Yeah, 6 years ago.
And why would that be there? Well, it's there so that stupid people in the audience will remember. Oh yeah, that's right, their kid died.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? There's these easy visual cues and things that don't even necessarily make sense, or the attitude is they don't have to, because they're hoping that you won't really think about it logically, and that they'll just be familiar and tell you stuff. And so really in 2002, we're not going for print is dead. We're carrying around orders in a folded up piece of paper, seriously? And we have we don't have, it doesn't feel like the internet exists in this world. It's really strange.
That is kind of strange,
right?
Actually, yeah.
Everything looks like a future extrapolated from 1989 to me. Where it's just before we had the internet. And also, some of this, to be fair, could be a holdover from, because I don't know, how much the script was rewritten, going all the way back to the early 90s.
Really?
This movie was optioned, and was originally supposed to be a sequel to Total Recall.
Oh.
And interesting that Colin Farrell is in this movie, because then he was the main character in the remake of Total Recall. But if this is what the world looked like in '92 when this movie almost got made, that makes a lot more sense to me.
Certainly.
And this looks more like the world of Total Recall. So maybe that has something to do with that, but like a lot of that extrapolation of technology is not smart and not believable, and I don't think was in 2002. But I'm noticing it more now because of all the stuff that a lot of things that we've gotten past, right? And like I get in 2002 we're still going to treat it as futuristic, that you can talk to your lights and tell them when to come on and off and stuff like that. But there were a number of other things where I'm just like, I don't even think in '02 that's that futuristic. But now it's.
So one of the things about the computer systems in this movie, and I used to know who designed these computer systems. I've looked it up before, but one of the things that I always thought, there's a line in Galaxy Quest where the aliens say, well, it's something more like, how do they operate the transporters? Well, it's something more of an art form, really. Like, you know, you just kind of do it. That's how Tom Cruise John Anderton operates his computer systems, more of an art form. He's turning wheels over here. You know, he's got these things on his fingers that control, like, the optics on the thing.
Yeah.
And you just have, you put a glass slide in here and it downloads onto the glass slide, which there are, like, glass optics and things like in computer systems today, but I don't feel it was trying to be predictive so much as just trying to be flashy and showy.
That's what it is, yeah. Now, I don't agree with you on the art form thing. I think that makes a lot of what we're looking at there, it looked like it had a logic where I can kind of see what things are supposed to be doing versus the Iron Man thing we would do a few years later after that, but especially a lot of sci-fi things since then that have built onto that will lazily just have somebody, like, moving stuff around in midair, and then clearly an algorithm is built to decide what the things are going to look like and where they're going to be positioned on the screen. So if you were to, like, look at it for any length of time and spend any time thinking about it, you're like, none of this actually means anything. It's
sure.
like I feel like the thing Atherton is doing, like, I can actually tell what it's supposed to be happening and what he's doing. It's not random like this, like Star Trek Discovery.
I'm not saying that it's random necessarily, but I am saying that, like, he doesn't operate it the way I would be operate. Like, I don't feel like you would be able to do these types of things in any sort of practical sense, even in the near future.
Yeah,
it's just more of a.
But I also don't get what I've never totally understood what's futuristic about that, except that, again, like you said, it's showy and look. We can kind of have a hologram in the middle of the air. Although he's at least got glass, it's not a hologram,
right?
And I guess it was kind of fun to see, like, what would be, I guess, the precursor to the actual hologram thing, where he actually has to, like, wear a thing on his fingers in order to do it, and it is on, like, a piece of glass. But it like you said, it looks really impractical. Not just the way I don't think the way he's moving stuff around looks all that impractical. I think just your hands would get tired. Like, I don't know why you'd want to be up in the air like that.
Definitely true.
But anyway, yeah, it was weird seeing what felt like a midpoint between what we have now and what we're doing in Iron Man, even though I don't feel like that's especially futuristic. And we've started just being really lazy with that. We're like, that's the future. Just because it's really easy to have an actor stand in a room and just do this, and then just add crap to it later.
So one thing I noticed in this viewing of this movie is just how heavy-handed some of the foreshadowing is. And I hadn't noticed that the other couple of times that I'd ever seen this movie. There were some things that, you know, directly foreshadowed what's going to happen later, and, like, even with what they're saying is like they're telling you a thing that ends up happening later. But one of the things that I noticed was that also this pre-crime shows its cracks very early on in this movie. And that was kind of interesting to me. I hadn't noticed that before. And one of the things that I mean by that is, like, you're seeing just how close they're cutting it on certain things. And you're wondering, is this really a practical way to go about, you know, solving murders?
What do you mean?
Like, so...
But here's the thing. If you knew somebody was definitely going to get killed... This is the thing I don't understand in this movie. So... If you're able to see the future... Again, I think the ethical issue is... should you try and convict and throw away people who haven't actually committed a crime yet? And I don't think this movie is actually about that. and I wish it was, and everybody talks about this movie like that's what it's about. It's not actually really about that.
They throw
Hardly
that,
at all.
They throw
Like,
that away at the end of the movie by saying everybody was, released without any sort of repercussions.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
They're like the police watched some of them for years, but that was it. We released them. With you're free and clear, you're clean slate.
But and there's maybe even an ethical debate to be had about like privacy issues with looking at people's future who haven't actually committed crimes yet. Maybe, but if you were like these precogs are, if you were 100% accurate. Now, the Minority Report thing gets really dicey then, because if and this was a part that I didn't quite understand, if the precogs sometimes disagree, then that by definition would mean that it would be possible for one of them to be wrong, that a person would murder someone, but they never talk about it like that. They always act like, well, there's a possible future, but I guess only if you try to prevent the crime, I guess?
Or if you let the person know that they were going to... If you let the person know they were going... Because that's what happens to John Anderton. He knows he's going to commit this crime. It turns out that he never actually committed the crime. He went forward with the whole thing, and it happened as it was displayed. They were just assuming he committed the crime. But the head guy, when he kills himself instead of John Anderton, because John Anderton got the red ball... he made the choice because Agatha kept saying, "You still have a choice."
Yeah.
In this, I thought that was kind of interesting, but it wanted to be about that, but it didn't make it clear enough that it was about.
That's the big disappointment for me. But what I was going to say is, like I said earlier, I would think that at the end of this movie we would be trying to figure out a way to continue to do pre-crime, but without having to enslave anybody to do it. And if they kind of have their ducks in a row where you sort of do have to enslave these people in order to do it, because if they did it voluntarily, well, the only way it works is if they're half in and out of consciousness. I don't really know how they could even have a life and do that.
And they couldn't.
And they couldn't. So there is that. But you'd think that there would be some research into it. We at the beginning, and I guess throughout, we keep talking about this system in too simplistic of a way. I think where it's if one time we can't prevent a crime, pre-crime breaks down and people aren't going to want it. Mm-hmm. I don't understand that. That's not how anything else in police work works. If you know for sure, without a shadow of a doubt, forgetting the Minority Report part of a movie called Minority Report,
right,
that somebody is going to murder someone, and you couldn't get there in time, mm-hmm, and they kill the person 30 seconds after you get there, or 30 seconds before you get there. Yeah. Really, you'd have to shut down the entire the entire project, because
I never agree with that either.
The only thing that would cause it to shut down is, so I get we have to be 100%, 100% of cases we have to be able to prove would have happened. Like those crimes would have been committed. I don't get, we didn't manage to get there in time for one, so we have to shut the whole thing down.
Right.
That makes no sense.
No, it doesn't. And also, if there was any doubt in one of them, and there are zero doubts in others, they make a big point about saying if there's a doubt in one of them, there's going to be a doubt in everything. That's not how real life works either. You can be doubtful on something, well, they get off. They don't get... they don't get convicted.
But I can see that argument for if there's doubt about the future, we shouldn't be doing this. I get that.
Right, but it's on a case-by-case basis, though. It should still be on a case-by-case basis.
There should be a doubt
in this one,
and I think
that's debatable.
To something you mentioned earlier, because you said something about you could tell people that they're going to murder someone, and then give them a chance to not do that. And the whole point of this is preventative, and clearly we're in, and I don't know if the movie knows how extreme it is, but we are clearly in a world where there's not really due process, but we're pretending like there is, or there's not as much.
At least in the
We're
area
having-
where this is happening.
We're
DC.
having Miranda rights read. Well, and then there's the question of, do those prisons where you basically like put like sleep helmets on people and put them in a closet? Is that being done everywhere? I'm gonna assume that's being done everywhere. I'm gonna assume that's not just part of.
Well, no.
This whole.
That is part of this whole
Is
thing
it?
because what the Halos do is they repeat the crime that was recorded from the precogs indefinitely in front of their eyes. So those Halos.
Wait, I didn't get that sense.
No, that they tell you that in the movie. That's what the Halos do.
I don't remember that coming up. But what about what about the leader from the Incredible Hulk who's running that place who says that like. He says something.
Flashes before your eyes.
No, he says something about like tranquil dreams and stuff, where like you live out like a perfect fantasy world. I thought that's what it was.
That you live out of. No, because there's the place where he goes to see the guy who runs the entertainment emporium.
That's not what I'm talking about.
He said the one guy says
the prison warden guy, when John gets there, is talking like he's gonna have like peaceful dreams or something.
No, he says that they say that your life flashes before your eyes and things like that, but they make a point earlier in the movie of telling you what the Halos do, and they're designed to make you relive the crime over and over and over again.
I didn't get that.
No.
I don't remember that line happening anywhere.
And
you don't seem to remember the line I'm
was.
talking about, but
no, where he gets wheeled in and right before he gets put in the thing.
Yeah, but he didn't say life flashing before his eyes. He said something about like happy, peaceful dreams.
I don't remember how the line went down.
So anyway, I don't know, but I want to know. The point I'm trying to make is, we don't know enough about how the society works, and clearly the people making this movie, and this, by the way, I forgot Spielberg directed, but clearly the people making this movie also have not fleshed that out enough and figured it out enough for themselves, because we're like I said, we're reading Miranda rights and stuff. We're acting like there's due process in this world, and we are not having to go to a court of law. And even though you're seeing the future and you're saying that like we're always right about it, I would still think the courts would have to be involved.
I would think so too. The court's going to make the ultimate determination whether that person was guilty or not. At this point,
and even if I would just think that you'd have to go through the motions in order to claim that you still had due process.
It could be a case of where, this is happening in DC. This is the only place this is happening so far before it's rolled out nationwide.
But you still have federal mandates and stuff, like.
But there would be exceptions in this case,
I don't know that there would.
This is a trial situation before it gets rolled out.
Yeah, I get that, but what I'm saying is there should be a debate about the preventative nature of this versus using it to give people a chance to not do the crimes they're going to do, and then whether or not we should risk them still doing the crime in order to preserve their freedom. There's not any debate about that, and we should be talking about that.
True enough. Whether they would go back to try and recommit a crime. At that case, you would have the precog. So the first crime gets prevented.
And there's no talk at all, by the way, about how the public feels about any of this.
No, and we just get a lot of propaganda from the side of the cops, and the side of precog,
and sometimes it's treated like the kind of satire that RoboCop is, but I feel like you would have but it's a little bit more realistic than that too. I don't think this is straight up satire. I don't think it's super exaggerated. Mm-hmm. So the commercials and things kind of are, but the people aren't. This isn't like everybody's lost their humanity. And again, when we get to the end, we're treating it with such and they live happily ever after, kind of ending, that I'm finding myself going in a sort of somewhat close to a dystopia. I don't know if you guys know what world you've built here.
A couple of things. They almost touched on what you're talking about when the spiders go to invade the building to check the eyes of everybody.
Yeah.
There's a woman who comes out who's talking to the officers about how they've terrified the little girl that she has. You know, you shouldn't be doing this, yada, yada, yada. clearly there's some distrust of the police at this time, and they're not.
But you
these
should
people
have
are in the slums though.
But again, nobody's talking about the whole pre-con thing.
Right.
So two big things. First of all, there should be people rioting and picketing in the streets over this. And second of all, everyone should be fleeing DC. No one should want to live there.
That's
people
true.
should be horrified for their lives because and the cops should feel like this too. Well, crap, I can't be absolutely 100% sure that I'm not going to kill someone, especially because that example at the beginning is not the only time that you have a red ball. Like,
right.
Red balls are talked about as a thing that occasionally happens, which means that, and also, they happen more frequently than something premeditated, because people are afraid of doing anything premeditated. So, if it's common knowledge, and it would be, that almost the only people getting arrested for murder right now, in DC anyway, are people who are going to do it in the future and won't become murderers until 30 seconds before it happens. Everyone should be horrified that they're all on the chopping block, because it could happen to anybody.
It could happen to anybody. That's
you see what I'm saying? There's no talk about that. People should be horrified to live in that city.
There's also no talk about the fact.
And wouldn't you be more at risk doing that as a cop? If you are a cop, wouldn't you be more at risk of becoming that person?
It certainly sounds that way. I'd also like to point out that they make a big deal about talking about how that, to your point about how crimes of passion now happen, well, not as frequently, as crimes of passion happen more frequently than premeditated
in comparison
crimes,
to premeditated
because
crimes, yeah.
they've brought those numbers down, and they make a big point about saying that once pre-crime is disbanded, murders start to skyrocket.
At least in that city.
Yes, absolutely. No more precogs? Well, I can get away with anything now.
And that would, again,
because there's no longer a
police
set up to deal with that.
And I'm not even saying that we should have had another scene, but if we could have lived in this world any more amount of time, that would have been an interesting thing to talk about. That you get the pros and cons of both. Like when I'm saying that we should have been debating more about the preventative nature of this versus what we could do with it if we had more of a Captain America mentality of let people do crimes and then punish them, as opposed to making everything about utilitarian greatest happiness principle, make sure to keep as many people happy and alive and deaths down as possible. I'm not saying that there aren't arguments for both sides of that. Yes, me personally, I tend to lean more toward that Captain America side, but I can see the arguments on both sides. So wouldn't it be interesting to then talk about at the very least what would happen if, now that we've implemented this, we got rid of it?
Right. Yeah. No, I'm with you there. I definitely think though that, for my own personal opinions, if you did have a system like this in reality, once you prevented the crime, that's where it stops. You prevented it. It didn't happen. No crime was committed. Go about your business. You know what I mean?
Not entirely.
So, there was no, maybe there was a crime of passion that was going to be committed, but the crime got stopped.
See,
you send the person to rehabilitation.
No, in that case, that doesn't work, because it was clearly it's silly when the guy goes like I wasn't going to do anything, because he obviously was going to. That's different. If it had been 5 minutes earlier, you're right. And see, this is this interesting kind of debate that I wish the movie was doing more of. The problem is that he had the weapon in his hand and he was very nearly about to kill the person, so at that point, that is attempted murder.
So, yes.
His hand was grabbed mid-thrust. That is attempted murder at that point.
So, Colin Farrell's character should have been the one. He was the perfect character to be addressing that side of things, and he never actually brings that up. He just brings up the flaws in the system being human, and, they kind of run with that to the point that they do.
Yeah.
But he should be talking about, he should really be getting into the details. I just don't see, why we're putting these people away who haven't actually committed the crimes. why we're not sending them through the Justice
Because
Department.
the mentality is clearly just numbers. It's ends justifies the means. It's, well, if the percentage of deaths is 0, who cares about curtailing people's freedoms?
Yeah.
That's clearly the mentality, and yet most of the people that are advocating for this don't seem to be worried about their own freedoms being curtailed at all. I just don't buy that. In a system that would allow this, there are other issues that would have to be at play in how the society is run.
The first inkling I kind of buy that because a lot of people who champion certain things don't believe it could ever happen to them. And
no,
we
of
get
course.
that with Anderton's character to some extent, and then he believes.
I'm not sure how much of that is intended. That's where it's a little bit sticky. Like,
sure.
This is not RoboCop. It's not Demolition Man, and maybe it should have been closer.
Demolition Man.
Maybe it should have been closer to that sort of a satire. The more we're talking about it, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Where like these people are oblivious to the problems in their society because they think that everything is working just fine. I don't think the movie fully understands what the problems that would have to be in the society because it doesn't even really show a lot of them.
Right. It doesn't even attempt to go there really. It's just focusing on the main the core and
the murder mystery ultimately.
Yeah, the two problems at hand that we kind of start with just at the beginning there. So
we should go ahead and wrap up. I think Tom Cruise is fantastic in this.
Oh, absolutely.
I think
he does a wonderful job.
And he's consistently good in most things. I think this is one of his better, kind of sci-fi performances. I'm reminded of that Live Die Repeat movie that came out a few years ago.
The Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah, that feels like
I liked that
kind
movie.
of a return to this again for him.
Yeah,
I think that might actually be a better movie than this, but I need to go back and watch it again. That's that.
It was a good movie.
That causality loop movie. But he's great in this. Colin Farrell's really good in this. I think Colin Farrell has a great death scene in this.
Definitely.
That's pretty good. The old man from RoboCop, I'm pretty sure that's who that is. I think he's pretty good in this. It's got and some of the cops I wish we spent more time with. The FBI guy that comes. Well, no, that's not the FBI guy. So Colin Farrell's the guy who comes in from the outside, right?
Mm-hmm. He's from the
Department
of Justice.
And then the guy who works with John is Damien Dark from Arrow. Who it's kind of sad to see where his career's gone because he's mostly in bad TV shows now. But he's good in this. I just wish he had a little more screen time. This is a tough sign flip for me because the more we're talking about it, the more I feel like I'm poking holes in it. At least for me. I mean, like we just watched it the one time I've seen it in 20 years, so I might be missing some stuff, and maybe there's some stuff I'm not giving enough credit to. But I don't totally know how to flip my sign on this. I enjoyed watching it a lot.
I know how I'm flipping my sign.
Well, you're going to go green, obviously.
I definitely still like it.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying I don't. I just
sure. I know.
I guess
you got some holes. And you got some valid points, honestly.
Once I poke a couple holes in a thing, and now I just have to say I'm not feeling it. But like, I'm frustrated by all the interesting stuff that it wanted to explore that it didn't. But it's and so it has that in common with iRobot, but it doesn't just like. It's not a completely compromised vision, though. Like I feel like, like that kind of was. So I don't know. Or well, that's even a horse.
So like you said,
I don't want to go back and talk about that thing again.
So like you said earlier, don't try to rate the movie just based on what it is, not what it didn't do, but what it is.
No, I know, but it's so uneven. Like I don't know.
It changes tones throughout the movie.
I can't do a fair sign flip on this, to be perfectly honest with you. Like I'm gonna say green, but like I'm frustrated with it.
Sure. I'm going green, of course. I'm feeling it. But this movie has two of my favorite lines in cinema. One I say all the time. The first one is in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. I really like that line. I think it says a lot, and I've kind of held on to that, and I think about that from time to time. But also, the prison warden, he goes, "You are not authorized," and I say that all the time for some stupid reason, but I always liked it since the first time I saw this movie.
Okay, yeah, I don't know why that's so weird. Also, how come the surgeon has rotten sandwiches and spoiled milk in his fridge?
That was one of the comedy scenes, and I'm just like it's played for comedy, and it was gross in the theater, and it was gross today. Like,
you throwing things?
I dropped my phone.
Anyway, well, thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching that movie, Randy.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And chatting with me about it. I appreciate it.
It was nice to see it. First watching in 20 years.
Yeah, it was. It was an odd experience for me. I'm still not sure how I feel about it. So anyway, well, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you again next time. I'm Captain Logan.
And I was Brandon.
Later, folks.